My name's Ryan. I'm 36. I manage supply routes for a mid-sized logistics company just outside of Denver. It's not glamorous work, but it's stable, predictable. Kind of like my marriage, at least. That's what I thought until the night everything changed. Linda and I have been married for almost 10 years. No kids, just the two of us, our dog Scout, and a routine that ran like clockwork. Dinner's around 7:30. Grocery runs on Sunday mornings. Netflix binges on weekends. I wouldn't have called it thrilling, but I'd have told you we were solid. Trusting. Familiar in that old, lived-in way. Looking back, I realize how much of that was an illusion I'd built for myself. It started on what should have been a normal Wednesday night. I just settled in on the couch with a beer and one of those true crime documentaries Linda usually rolls her eyes at. She had gone upstairs after dinner, said she had emails to answer. I didn't think twice about it. I didn't think twice about a lot of things then. At 11:40 p.m. I heard her coming down the stairs fast, too fast for Linda, who usually drags her feet unless there's wine waiting at the end of the hallway. I looked up. She had her coat halfway on, her bag slung over one shoulder, phone in her hand. Emergency, she said, breathless, not meeting my eyes. System failure at work. I have to go in. She works in IT management. Late calls aren't unheard of. It wasn't the first time she'd had to go in on short notice. But this time felt different. Maybe it was how she fumbled with her keys. Maybe it was the way her voice sounded rehearsed, too smooth, like she'd practiced it. Still, I didn't question her. Not out loud. She turned for the door, but something slipped from her bag and landed on the floor behind her. Her charger. I picked it up and jogged toward the entryway, half expecting to see her still lacing her boots. But she was already gone. I caught a glimpse of her taillights disappearing down the street. That's when her phone buzzed. She'd left it on the coffee table, face up. Still connected to her home Wi-Fi. That little detail matters. If she'd made it out of range, the message wouldn't have come through, not that way. I shouldn't have looked. I tell myself that even now. But curiosity didn't feel like the right word for what I was feeling. It was more like static in my ears. A flicker of something sharp in my chest. My hands moved before my brain caught up. It was a push notification from her messaging app. Not her work Slack. Not her email. A personal chat. The name on the screen was just the letter J. No last name. No photo. Just that one letter and the message below it. Room 512 as always. Rushing. I stared at it for longer than I want to admit. Read it once. Twice. Tried to find some way it could mean something else. Room 512. As always. That didn't sound like tech support. That didn't sound like a system reboot. Rushing. That word hit me harder than I expected. It was affectionate. Familiar. The kind of shorthand you use with someone you know well enough not to waste time with pleasantries. I didn't feel anger. Not yet. What I felt was disorientation, like the ground had shifted beneath me, like I'd missed the exit and was speeding down a road I didn't recognize. I grabbed my jacket and keys. Didn't think. Just moved. The roads were mostly empty that time of night, streetlights casting long shadows on the pavement. I wasn't sure where I was going until I realized I'd already turned toward the interstate heading west, toward the hotel district just outside the city. I'd never been to the Westfield Inn, but I knew of it. We'd passed it a dozen times on the way to the lake. Linda had once made a comment about how low-key it looked. Discreet. Quiet. My stomach dropped as I pulled into the lot and saw her car there. Parked neatly by the side entrance. Like she belonged there. I didn't get out of my car. I just sat in the driver's seat, engine idling, hands on the wheel. I didn't know what I was waiting for, maybe to see her come out with someone, maybe for her to walk out alone and give me some plausible excuse. But mostly, I waited to see if the last 10 years had really just unraveled. 25 minutes passed. Long enough to count every car in the lot, to rehearse a dozen confrontation scenarios, to try and convince myself there was still a version of the story that didn't end with betrayal. But there wasn't. I couldn't bring myself to go inside. Something stopped me, maybe pride, maybe fear of what I'd see. I just drove back home, back to the house that felt different now, like someone had rearranged the furniture while I wasn't looking. When I walked through the door, Scout greeted me like nothing was wrong. I stood in the foyer for a long time, staring at the phone still sitting on the coffee table. The charger was still in my hand. I left both where they were. Around 1:30 a.m. Linda came back. Her footsteps were light, like she was trying not to wake me. I stayed on the couch, eyes half closed, pretending to doze. She leaned over and kissed my forehead. It was just a server sync issue, she whispered. Nothing major. I murmured something back. I can't even remember what. Something vague. Non-committal. I didn't want her to know I was awake. I wanted to hear her lie without the pressure of an audience. She went upstairs, showered, got into bed like everything was fine. I lay there for the next hour, eyes open in the dark, listening to her breathing even out as she drifted off. She looked so peaceful, like someone who didn't have a secret. But I knew better. The morning after was painfully normal. Linda made coffee like she always did, humming something tuneless while the machine sputtered to life. She wore that blue robe I got her for our 5th anniversary, the one with the little embroidered initials over the chest. LR. I used to think that was sweet. Now it felt like a joke. She slid a mug across the counter toward me without looking up. You're quiet this morning, she said in a light voice. Everything okay? I lied. Just tired. She nodded, sipping her own coffee, scrolling through her phone like it didn't hold a ticking bomb inside. I couldn't stop watching her hands, how steady they were. How practiced. I waited for her to say something about the emergency at work, to mention the office, the late-night server crash. But she didn't. Not a single detail. Not even a throwaway complaint about having to stay late. It was like that whole trip never happened. That's when the real shift began. See, the lie itself was one thing. The message, the hotel, that was explosive. But what hit harder were the quiet realizations that came afterward. The puzzle pieces I didn't know were even part of the same box. They started clicking into place so fast I could barely keep up. I spent most of that day alone. Took Scout out for a long walk, longer than usual. I kept replaying moments, tiny, stupid things I'd brushed off at the time that suddenly felt like warning signs I had ignored. Like how Linda used to hate the gym. Hated it. She once called it sweaty capitalism. But about 6 months ago, she signed up for some boutique fitness club downtown. It's all women, she'd said with a grin. Spin classes, yoga, the works. A good way to unwind. I remember thinking it was out of character, but I was proud of her for doing something new. She started coming home sore but happy, saying she felt rejuvenated. And I, idiot that I was, took that as a good thing. Then there were the weekend seminars. They started cropping up in the spring. She'd mentioned them offhand like they were barely worth bringing up. Just a 2-day thing in Boulder. Team building stuff. There were never any photos. No tags on social. No stories about coworkers. She'd come back with vague lines like, it was fine, or the hotel food *kid. In hindsight, I don't think she even went to Boulder. And the phone habits. God, how had I missed that? She used to leave it lying around all the time. Now it was practically welded to her hand. Face down on the table. Silence during dinner. I'd walk into the room and her thumb would flick the screen off before I could glance over. Once I asked who she was texting. She smiled and said, you know me, probably arguing with the group chat over brunch plans. I laughed. She laughed. But now that same laugh plays in my head like a soundbite. False. Too smooth. I remember a night about a month ago when she went to Atlanta for a girls' trip. She'd been weirdly excited about it. Bought new dresses, new heels. Even picked out a lacy red top I'd never seen before. I made a dumb joke, something like, trying to outshine your friends? She said, they're not for them, and winked. At the time, I felt flattered. Now I think she wasn't lying. They weren't for her friends. They were for whoever Jay is. There were other things, too. Subtler. Like the new cologne smell I picked up on one of her jackets when she tossed it on the bed one night. It wasn't mine. I asked her, and she said, oh, I tried a sample at Nordstrom. Some guy cologne. I wanted to see how it smelled after an hour. I laughed again. I always laughed. I was always giving her the benefit of the doubt. That's what K*LLS me the most, not the cheating, not the hotel, not even the lies. It's how easily I kept letting her off the hook. Last week, I think it was Thursday, I dropped by her office with coffee. Just a simple gesture. I was nearby, thought it'd be nice. But when I got there, the receptionist told me Linda was out to lunch with a few contractors. I texted her and asked if she wanted me to swing by wherever they were. She said, oh, that's sweet, but it's a quick bite at Denelli's. Denelli's had a temporarily closed sign out front. Renovations. Bright orange tape across the windows. I stood there like a fool, holding a latte and a pastry in a paper bag. I never mentioned it. I kept telling myself, maybe they changed plans. Maybe she meant the Denelli's across town. Maybe. I was drowning in maybes. Now they all sound like screams. That night, after the hotel incident, I sat at our dining table and pulled out a notebook. I started listing things. Just facts. Dates, places, weird coincidences. I was desperate to see if it formed a picture. At first, it looked like static, just noise. But the more I wrote, the more it lined up. The new lingerie I found in the laundry basket 2 weeks ago. the dry cleaning receipt from a place near the hotel. The day she said she was stuck in traffic but came home with a gift bag from a mall in a completely different zip code. Her Google history had been wiped a few times. She never used to do that. Even our dog noticed something. Scout used to sleep curled against her side. Now he follows me more, watches her from the hallway. That Friday, I went out to the garage just to breathe. I sat on a folding chair surrounded by tools I never use, next to a paint can that's been unopened for 2 years. I stayed there until it got dark, letting the cold creep in around my ankles. I didn't cry. I haven't cried. But I felt something else, like a cold current running under my skin. The kind of feeling you get when a power outage hits in the middle of a movie and the silence suddenly feels alive. She came out and found me eventually. "You okay?" she asked, genuinely concerned. "You've been out here forever." "Just clearing my head," I said. She nodded and leaned against the doorframe. "Work's been crazy, huh?" I looked at her. The way her hair was pulled back. The slight shine of lip gloss. The little silver necklace she always wore tucked behind her collarbone. I wanted to ask who he was. How long it had been going on. If she ever planned to tell me or if she was just going to vanish one day with a clean story and a new apartment. Instead I said, "Yeah, just crazy." She smiled. "You want to order in tonight?" "Sure." We got Thai. She ordered for both of us. Knew my usual. We watched an episode of a show we used to love and barely spoke. At one point, she laughed at something the main character said. I turned and studied her profile in the glow of the screen. She didn't look like someone who was cheating. That's the part no one tells you. Affairs don't always come with neon signs and lipstick stains and missed calls. Sometimes they come in quiet laughs. In Tuesday night takeout. In someone brushing your arm and saying, "You've got something in your hair." I went to bed that night lying an inch away from her. Both of us facing opposite directions. Her breathing evened out after a while. She fell asleep fast. She always does. I stared at the ceiling, every muscle tight. I didn't know what I was going to do next, but I knew I wasn't imagining things anymore. I hadn't really slept in 3 days. I'd lie there at night with my back to her, eyes wide open in the dark, listening to the soft hum of her breath and wondering how someone could look so peaceful while lying to my face. I used to believe peace was built through trust, shared routines, late-night talks, small rituals like making each other tea or sharing grocery lists. But now I understood that peace could be a mask, too. And Linda wore hers perfectly. By the third night, something inside me snapped. It wasn't anger. Not the screaming, smashing kind. No, it was colder than that. Calmer. A quiet shift from confusion to decision. I didn't want to guess anymore. I didn't want to play detective through memory fragments and strange receipts. I needed facts. And I needed them now. It was just past 2 a.m. The only light in the house was from the oven clock, 2:17 blinking in pale green. Linda was out cold, one leg over the comforter, her face buried in the pillow. I got up slowly and padded to her office, careful not to step on the creaky board near the hallway bend. I knew every inch of this house. I'd painted these walls with her, installed that crooked shelf together. We had picked this place because it felt like us. I walked into the office and closed the door behind me. Quietly. Her desk was tidy as always. Minimal. A small lamp, a set of color-coded folders, and one drawer that never quite closed all the way, the bottom one. I opened it. Under a stack of old warranties and an unopened notebook, I saw it. A phone. Not her usual one. Smaller. Older. No case. The kind of phone you'd forget existed unless you were using it for something specific. I held my breath as I pressed the power button. No password. It opened straight to the home screen. 3 apps. One of them was a messaging app one didn't recognize, something off-brand. I clicked it open. And just like that, the mask fell. The first thing I saw was a message from 2 hours earlier. From Jason. Not Jason. That detail alone made my heart beat so loudly I thought I'd drop the phone. Still can't believe he bought the emergency story again. Face with tears of joy. Room 512 never gets old. And then her reply. He even offered to drive me. I had to fake a work call in the hallway. Face with tears of joy. Close one. I kept scrolling. The chat log stretched back months. Photos. Inside jokes. Voice notes. Mentions of weekend plans. A picture of Scout asleep on our couch with a caption that read, "He doesn't know I'll be moving out with the dog soon. I think I'll miss him more than Ryan lol." I stood there completely still. I didn't feel rage. Not even sadness. Just a hollow quiet that wrapped itself around my ribs like wire. I knew people talked about their partners during affairs. Jokes, insults, lies, it's part of the story they build to justify what they're doing. But reading my name in her words like that, casually woven between emojis and laugh tracks, it made me feel less like a husband and more like a character in someone else's sitcom. In another thread, Jason had written, "He really thinks you're at that leadership retreat?" Linda replied, "Yeah, he's so easy to fool sometimes. It's almost boring. Almost boring." I put the phone down and sat in her desk chair, the soft creak of the cushion the only sound in the room. My hands trembled slightly, but my breath stayed steady. She was gone. Not physically, but in every way that mattered. Her body still slept in our bed, but her mind had already packed up and left. I copied everything I could. *TS. Message threads. I took a photo of the phone itself, timestamped. It felt surreal, like I was helping someone else build a case. Like I was just the witness, not the husband. At one point I thought maybe I should just confront her now. Walk in, turn on the lights, throw the phone on the bed and scream, "Who the hell is Jason?" Make her feel the jolt I was feeling. Make her stammer, explain, beg. But I didn't. Instead, I stood up, put the phone back exactly where I found it, and walked out of the room as quietly as I had entered. I didn't sleep after that. I just laid there beside her, wide awake, watching the ceiling shift from dark to gray to morning. At 6:42 a.m. she rolled over and smiled at me. "Morning," she mumbled, I still puffy with sleep. "You're up early." I nodded. "Yeah. Couldn't sleep." She stretched and said, "Wanna do pancakes?" "Sure." We moved through the morning like nothing had changed. But everything had. Every smile, every kiss, every casual joke, it all felt like I was talking to a stranger wearing her face. That day at work, I did something I never thought I'd do. I printed everything. The *TS. The messages. The image of her and Jason holding hands in some hotel lobby mirror selfie. I even printed the one of the dog. I needed it all on paper. Tangible. Unerasable. I opened a new bank account that afternoon. Quietly shifted half of our savings into it. Just enough to protect myself. Not enough to raise a flag yet. Then I checked our shared credit history. $12,000. Transferred over the last 5 weeks to someone named Danny K. I stared at the name for a long time. I'd never heard of her. I clicked the account details. She was listed as an assistant under Linda's LLC, the one she started for her freelance consulting work last year. Linda barely used that account. Until now. A quick online search and a few emails later, I had a hit. Danny K wasn't an assistant. She was a freelance designer, and according to LinkedIn, she used to work with Jason at a digital branding agency 2 years ago. I sent her a message. Polite. Careful. She responded the next morning. Danny agreed to meet at a neutral coffee shop near the park. She was younger than I expected. Blonde hair, oversized hoodie, looked like she hadn't slept well in a few days. "I don't want to get in the middle of anything," she said right away. But if she listed me as her assistant, that's fraud. I never worked for her. Jason asked me to let them funnel money through my Venmo to keep things simple. I didn't ask questions, but now. She trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "I just need to know if they're planning something," I said. She hesitated, then nodded. They were talking about moving. Like soon. New city. Clean slate. Jason said they were going to take your dog, too. Linda didn't want to deal with the awkwardness of custody. I couldn't help it, I laughed. A bitter, dry thing that startled both of us. "They planned the custody of my dog," I said. She looked away. "Sorry. I didn't know the full picture." Neither did I until now. I thanked her. Bought her coffee. Walked out into the cold sunlight with a folder full of confirmation. Not suspicion. Not theory. Truth. I went home and sat in the living room, lights off. Linda wouldn't be home until 7, another strategy meeting. I stared at the shadows moving across our walls. There was no going back now. I had my answer. I didn't cause a scene. That surprised even me. You grow up thinking if someone ever betrays you, you'll flip a table, yell until your voice gives out, maybe throw a glass or storm out into the rain like in some movie. But when it actually happens, when the betrayal sits in your hands, pixelated, time-stamped, undeniable, it doesn't feel like thunder. It feels like stillness. The kind that hits just before a storm when the air is too quiet and everything waits to break. So I waited. I woke up the next morning and made breakfast. Eggs, toast, coffee. Nothing fancy. Linda came down in her robe, humming again like she hadn't just mapped out her new life without me behind my back. She kissed my cheek, complimented the omelet. You should open a cafe, she joked, nudging me. I smiled. Maybe someday. She laughed, poured her coffee, sat across from me like everything was fine. I watched her closely, not out of paranoia, but fascination. I was living with someone who could plan a quiet exit, a clean betrayal, while asking me if I wanted to go antiquing this weekend. She told me she'd be out most of the afternoon. Another work thing. I nodded. Didn't press. Just watched her pack up her laptop and slide her phone, her real phone, into her purse like she wasn't hiding another one in her office drawer. The moment she left, I moved. I sat down at her desk again. The burner phone was still there. I rechecked the messages to make sure I hadn't imagined them. I hadn't. Jason had texted her that morning. Countdown's real now. Sunday still good. Perfect, she replied. He thinks I'm going to a yoga retreat. Should give me 2 days to move everything. 2 days. They were planning it for this weekend. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the wall, trying to let that settle in. She wasn't just cheating. She wasn't just lying. She was going to disappear. Take the dog. The savings. Maybe even the car if I hadn't noticed in time. And the worst part? She wasn't going to tell me until she was already gone. I spent the next hour pulling records. Bank transfers, credit card activity, old messages. Anything that would give me leverage if she tried to make this ugly. It wasn't about revenge, I didn't want that. I just wanted to be prepared. Because when someone's willing to burn down a decade of your life without flinching, you can't trust that they'll leave gently. I found more money had been moved. Quiet transfers just under the radar. All of it sent to a digital wallet under DK Services, clearly still Danny, still Jason's ally. She was their middlewoman. Their decoy. Their fallback plan. But I had proof now. Screensh *TS. Emails. A full timeline. I printed everything. I went to the FedEx down the street and printed it all in color on thick paper. I didn't know why. Maybe I just wanted it to feel real. Something about the weight of those pages in my hands made it harder to pretend any of it could still be explained away. I put the folder in my work bag and went back home. Then I called Danny. She picked up on the third ring, sounding cautious. Hello? It's Ryan, I said. A pause. Right? I didn't expect to hear from you again. I'm not mad at you. I just have one question. Okay. Did Linda ever mention what city they were moving to? Another pause. Yeah. San Diego. Jason's got family there. Said it would be a fresh start. They were looking at condos near the water. She mentioned some pet-friendly place. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. Thank you. I hope you're okay, Ryan, she said quietly. I didn't answer. I just ended the call. That night, Linda came home late. I was already on the couch when she walked in, looking drained and a little too cheerful. Hey, babe, she said, setting her bag down. You're up late. I smiled. Was just reading. She kissed me. Her lips still tasted like mint gum and cheap Chardonnay. I missed you today, she said. I wanted to ask, did Jason miss you too? But I didn't. I just smiled again. Missed you too. She got ready for bed. Brushed her teeth. Changed into pajamas. Climbed in beside me like she hadn't been whispering with another man about how best to disappear from my life without confrontation. As she dozed off, I lay awake again, watching the ceiling, listening to her breathe. And that's when the shift happened. I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel like the world had ended. I felt ready to take my life back before she could take it from me. The next morning, while she was in the shower, I checked her joint account again. Another 1,000 gone, marked as office equipment. She really thought I'd never look, never ask, that I'd just keep smiling and making pancakes while she packed our life into boxes under my nose. I emailed the documents to myself. Twice. Uploaded them to cloud storage. Put them on a flash drive. Then I called a lawyer. She came highly recommended, no nonsense, discreet. Her assistant booked me for a consultation that afternoon. I didn't tell Linda. She was too busy telling me about her yoga retreat this weekend anyway. Said she'd be leaving Friday night and coming back Sunday evening. That gave me 72 hours. More than enough time. She kissed me goodbye that morning like always. I held the kiss just a second longer than usual. Memorized her face. Not because I'd miss her, but because I wanted to remember what deception looked like up close. That afternoon I met with the lawyer. She flipped through the files silently, nodding every few pages. This is thorough, she said. You've documented everything? Everything. Do you want to serve her papers before or after she leaves? I thought about it. Imagined her driving toward Jason thinking she'd pulled off the perfect crime only to find the locks changed and her accounts frozen when she got back. After, I said, let her go. Let her think she's free. The lawyer nodded. We'll need to talk about the dog. I'm not giving him up. Then you need to be gone before she gets back. I nodded. I will be. That night, I lay in bed beside her again. She scrolled through Instagram like everything was fine. Laughed at some video. Showed me a meme. I laughed too. It was the last time I'd do that. On Thursday, she called from work and asked if I could help her pack for the retreat. Just yoga mats and comfy stuff, she said. I'll do it tonight. No problem, I said. I already knew she wouldn't be bringing anything back. That evening, she packed a duffel bag and laid out her outfit for the drive. Told me she'd probably lose signal in the mountains. I nodded like I believed her. Friday morning, she made us both smoothies. We'll talk when I get back, she said. About taking some time off together. I think we need a break. I nodded again. Have fun, I said. Be safe. She left around 11 a.m. By noon, I started packing. I started with the essentials: passport, birth certificate, insurance info. The kinds of things people don't realize are irreplaceable until they're gone. Everything went into my old hiking backpack. No suitcases. No boxes. Just one bag. There's a strange clarity that comes from knowing your world is ending. No more debating. No more second-guessing. The worst already happened. All that was left was to choose how I walked away from it. I moved methodically. Grabbed a flash drive with all the documents. My laptop. A few changes of clothes. My dad's watch. A photo of Scout as a puppy, the one where he's biting the shoelace off my sneaker. That went into the front pouch. I didn't need much else. I wasn't planning on turning back. Linda's yoga retreat gave me a 2-day window. I didn't know if she'd really stay through Sunday or if she'd get anxious and come back early, but I wasn't going to wait to find out. I started clearing out digital traces. Logged out of shared streaming accounts. Transferred my email archive to a new inbox. Changed passwords she might still know. I deleted our old shared calendar. Just a clean break, no breadcrumbs. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom for a while. She'd left it pristine, probably imagining she'd return to it like nothing had changed. The pillows were fluffed, the comforter neatly folded at the edge. On her nightstand, a paperback novel she never finished. One of those self-improvement books she bought after starting her wellness journey. It struck me then how many things she started and never intended to finish. Careers. Friendships. Even us in a way. I left her book untouched. Just one more thing she could find when she got back and realize I'd seen it all and chosen to say nothing out loud. I went into the guest room, my makeshift crash pad these past few weeks, and stripped the bed. No one likes sleeping in a bed that still smells like someone else's goodbye. I didn't want her to think I'd left in a rage. I wanted her to see this wasn't impulsive. It was deliberate. Me choosing to go while I still had a choice. Scout sat on the floor watching me. His ears perked, tail low. You're staying, buddy, I whispered. Not because I want to leave you, but because I won't rip you in half the way she was planning to. I'd already made arrangements. A neighbor agreed to take him for a few days, and after that, my cousin Sarah would foster him until we figured out something more permanent. Linda might have made plans to take Scout, but I wasn't about to let her walk out with the last piece of home I had left. I left copies of our adoption papers and a notarized letter with my lawyer. If she wanted to fight me on it, she'd have to do it in court. By Friday night, the house was stripped of my presence. I left behind the furniture, the shared photos on the walls, the wedding album I didn't want to look at ever again. I didn't need her face smiling at me from a beach in Aruba, pretending like forever was something we both meant. What I didn't leave behind, though, was silence. On the dining table, I placed an envelope. Inside was a letter. Handwritten. Not because I was feeling poetic, because I wanted her to know this wasn't a digital tantrum or a rage quit message typed out between swipes. It was calm. Final. Real. Linda. I know. About Jason. The hotel. The burner phone in the office. The money transfers. The messages where you laughed about how easily I trusted you. I didn't shout. I didn't confront. You had already made your decision. I just didn't realize it until the pieces started falling into place faster than I could ignore them. I'm not angry, at least not the way you probably expected. I'm tired. Tired of being a character in someone else's game. Tired of pretending not to notice. You plan to leave clean. Quiet. Discreet. So I'm doing the same. I won't be here when you return. I won't ask you why. I already know why. I've taken my things. The rest is yours. I transferred my half of the remaining savings into a separate account. What's left in our shared account is yours to keep. Consider it a parting gift. Scout is safe. You won't find him here. He's with someone I trust. I'm not fighting you for him. But I'm not surrendering him either. Don't try to explain. There's nothing left to say. I won't sit at a table where the chair across from me is filled with lies. I placed it beneath her favorite coffee mug, the one that said rise and grind. Another lie, I guess. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat on the porch with Scout curled next to me, the stars looking down with the same kind of distant indifference I was learning to cultivate. By 6 a.m. Saturday, I loaded the car. Gave Scout a final hug. Told the neighbor to text me once Linda showed up. I didn't want her thinking he'd run off. I wanted her to know I'd planned this. Just like she had. The drive was long and quiet. I headed west at first, then cut south. My destination, Nevada. I hadn't been there in years, but I had an old friend there, Max, from college. He'd always said, if you ever need to disappear for a while, I got you. At the time, we'd laughed. Now, I just hoped he meant it. Max picked up on the second ring. Yo, he said groggily. It's Ryan. Silence. Then, damn. It's been a minute. Yeah. Sorry to drop this on you, but do you remember what you said once about disappearing? Another pause. Then, without missing a beat, you need a couch or a spare room? Just a place to land. For now. Got both. Come through. I drove in silence for the next 6 hours. Stopped once for gas, twice for coffee. I kept expecting to feel some kind of release, some big exhale, some moment of clarity. It didn't come. What I felt instead was something quieter. Heavier. Like the last 10 years had folded themselves into a single, cold stone in my chest, and I was going to carry it until it wore itself down. Still, there was peace and movement. I arrived at Max's place just after sunset. He lived outside of Reno in a house that smelled like old books and black coffee. The moment I walked in, he looked me over and said nothing. Just handed me a beer and pointed to the couch. We didn't talk that first night. We just sat there, two guys in their 30s who had seen too much and said too little. When I finally lay down, I didn't expect to sleep. But I did. Hard. For the first time in weeks, my body gave in. The tension let go. The anger, the suspicion, the white-knuckle dread, I left it behind in that empty house. And when I woke up the next morning, the sun looked different. Not warmer. Not brighter. Just new. The calls started 2 days after I left. First a couple, then a dozen. By the end of the week, over 30 missed calls. Linda's name blinking on my screen like it still meant something. She left voicemails too. Apologies, half explanations, some with tears, some with anger. The phases of grief in real time. I didn't answer. Then came the texts, essays, really. Promises of change. Please for a second chance. Pictures of Scout's toys. I never meant to hurt you. It wasn't real. You don't understand. But I did. Then a message from an unknown number. Just a voice, Jason. Calm, practiced, fake regret dripping from every word. Hey, man. I know things got out of hand. Linda's hurting. We didn't plan this, well, not the way it happened. Just wanted to say it's not too late to work things out. Click. I blocked the number. After that, it got quiet. Blessedly quiet. I rented a small cabin by a lake an hour from Max's place. No neighbors. No reception. Just the wind, pine trees, and the steady crackle of a fire at night. I spent days walking trails with no destination, cooking one-pan meals, reading paperbacks from the 90s. For the first time, I wasn't checking the clock. I wasn't refreshing a screen, waiting for her to walk in to lie again. I was just there. Breathing. Alone, but not lonely. A month later, I moved to a small town in Colorado, one of those places where everyone knows your name within a week. I found a rental with a front porch and fog that lingered over the fields every morning like a held breath. I picked up some contract work, just enough to keep my hands busy. Spent afternoons fixing up the house. Even bought a bike. On Wednesdays, I started going to the local library. They held literary nights, readings, discussion groups. That's where I met Marie. She wasn't loud. Didn't pry. She just listened. We talked about books, bad coffee, small things that didn't feel small. After meetings, we'd walk. Sometimes in silence. Sometimes in laughter. I didn't tell her everything. Not at first. And she never asked. She just made space for me to exist without expectation. Linda's messages still came in sporadic, desperate. But I'd already routed her email to spam. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting for closure. I had it. This wasn't about revenge or even healing. This was about beginning. And for the first time in a long time, I had.